Good morning. Welcome to my channel. My name is David Okon. Talking about the cost of living. I'm talking about China in terms of the cost of living. And I've been looking at China. I've been relating the topic of China dealing with the cost of living across the globe. I've been talking about the cost of living for a long time, and the basis of my program is to demonstrate that the cost of living is caused by poverty. Poverty in any country is income related, and normally when people struggle financially, normally this is caused by income issue. And income normally is controlled by the state. The way income and wealth is produced in a country, but also the way this wealth are allocated through businesses, private and public businesses. This may include trade and other aspects of government and state operations. Now, I have said over and again that the reason we experience the cost of living and poverty is so, as I was saying, the cost of living is a poverty related and also policy related problem. And as I continue to look at China, I'm also comparing what happens in China with what happens to the rest of the world, because I've said elsewhere, and if you watch this video, watch it with the rest of the videos, that because of globalization, where systems have been harmonized, what happens in China is similar to what happens around the world with any issue, with any topic. On this occasion, I'm talking about the cost of living crisis, which is an income problem. This income problem, like I said previously, only occurs, or should I say mainly, fundamentally, it occurs because the government has mismanaged the public sector, or rather, should I say, closed it down. As in practice, as you see across the world, you will find that the public sector is actually closing down, such that there are waiting times and waiting hours in terms of housing, when the government gives housing to people who need housing. And the definition of need is also changing within the social services, within the welfare system of housing, of benefit, of healthcare, education, public transport, and all those, and employment. Actually, I've actually said employment is a welfare issue, because unless the government intervenes in the economy to put the right kind of policy, the employers' instinct is not to pay their employees. They only pay their employees in most cases because the government actually put pressure on them. In a modern world where land is taken away from everyone, actually, and concentrated, where land is taken by the state away from the citizens, and given to the super rich through means of capitalism, which means the land are actually taken, and in one way the other, land is taken away from people who do not have money and sold off to the super rich who hoard it. They hoard the land. They just keep the land. They don't even they don't develop the land necessarily. These days they hide behind environmental protection, including failing to produce enough food and energy for people who need food and energy. And there is also a parallel economy where now organic food and some other form of energy or buildings, like what you call that ecosystem, eco building systems are being applied to the super rich, in their mansions, where some houses are now being built without any requirement for using energy, and only the super rich can access this kind of facilities. Also when they're driving in their cars, and their luxury cars, limousines and spaces, where they don't necessarily need to use energy. Even if they are to use energy, they can afford it. And so you find that there is a parallel economy for the few, which is what now remains mainly provided by the private sector. Luxury car, luxury apartment, mansion, multimillionaire mansions, and private schools, hospitals, dentistry, transportation, private transport. So this is all the trend in society, to explain why the majority of the population in society is being excluded by capitalism, extreme form of capitalism. And I've been saying this over and again, and it's for people to really realize this, because it is very easy to believe what politicians say about the state of the nation, and because the system is also very complex, and sometimes politicians don't really explain things to the electorate very clearly, because they have a lot of different kind of responsibilities. Sometimes politicians want to win elections, so they don't want to tell the whole truth. For them, politics has turned into a game. And not least because most politicians around the world are actually multimillionaires. They are not impacted by poverty. And I would say poverty refers to, relate to those who work for a living, the lower and the middle classes. Although mainly the middle class tend to not realize that they are poor, but also the working class in rich countries, because the credit system sometimes given to people who don't even work, people who are on minimum wage or low income, and also sometimes benefits are given to people who work, or who don't work, people who are sick or people who are retired. These are actually poor income. The benefit is poor income. Minimum wage is poor income in any country where it operates. We look at China. Although China generally is said to be significant improvement in terms of welfare, but increasingly, because China is adopting capitalism, the private system, privatizing the public sector anyway, and that means it's the same with the rest of the world, including continents like Africa. I've looked at Africa. If you watch the rest of my video, talk about this because it's really important. It covers every issue in society, and it is a very serious issue which people need to understand to try and solve the problem. Part of the way to solve the problem is try and get out of poverty yourself. if you live in a country, if you're a citizen of a country or resident of a country. Try to get out of poverty, because if you stay in poverty, you are going to be excluded from everything. And you could die. If you cannot access healthcare, you are going to die. If you cannot access education, you will not have access to opportunity, including employment and other opportunities, which means you are going to be excluded from income. And you use income to buy goods and services. If you cannot access goods and services because of limited income, then you're going to be excluded. Exclusion from things like food and water to access it can lead to death, because the first form of medicine is actually food. It may not sound like it. People take food for granted, especially in rich countries. But the reality of poverty is now very real. It's very serious. Except sometimes people don't realize, because they have been relying on credit. Perhaps they're being paid maybe good money until they probably lose their jobs. So understanding poverty has been really lacking in every society. That's why I'm trying to do a material review of some countries, including places like China. So that's why I'm looking at China to try and discuss what I believe is really important. In the process of also discussing a country like China, I'm looking at the humanitarian issue involving culture, which actually involve respect for humanity or lack of respect for humanity. And this is a policy issue in terms of culture, but also in addition to public policy in relation to economic development, economic and social development, which is failing because of privatization, partially, but also in lack of proper education on the matter, on the elements of culture, which include, because you see, you don't fight in Ukraine if you respect Ukrainian, if you are Russia. Which means the culture, where there is no respect, the culture is really not working. If you value your life, you look after yourself. If you value other people, you look after them. And if you don't value them, then you disrespect them, you treat them like trash. And this is what's not happening. There's a lot of disrespect. Politicians do not respect electorate, and electorate do not actually respect politicians. But that's an example. That's why sometimes in some countries, politicians are being attacked. Some of them are being killed. Or on the street, people are being attacked. Children are attacking children because of this cultural failure. Disrespect. There is drugs. There is all sorts of violence in every part of the world, in cities, in villages. Increasingly, the world is getting more violent, not less. The nature of violence may be different. People at war may use biological weapons, some of which increasingly are becoming less visible. Things like using chemical weapons may not be seen. If, say, for example, an aeroplane, a war plane spray death in an area to kill people, mass killing of enemies, you wouldn't necessarily realize that, weapon has been used, chemical weapons, biological weapons. I would like to think that going forward with technology, the state is going to weaponize even the climate, the weather. It's going to rain like a weapon. The wind, the storms is going to do a lot of damage. as a weapon of mass destruction. Extreme weather, like extreme, drought, shortages of water supply. This can be a form of weapon if the violence doesn't stop, or perhaps it is now happening because you see, the state operate behind the scenes. They operate in secrecy. If they're doing something good, we may or may not even know it because the intelligence requirement, security requirement. If they are making some really valuable thing, it may be good or bad. They may not tell people about it. They keep it secret because they are the state. We wouldn't know what they're doing, although there are other laws for transparency, accountability. But that is just, to me, that is symbolic, really, because in substance, the state operate in secrecy, and so what they do, we may or may not know. I'll be making these comments going forward. Leave a comment below if you know anything about culture, if you know anything about capitalism, if you know anything about the cost of living. Cost of living is a symptom of a wider problem, and I've been discussing this all along. And subscribe to my channel if you haven't subscribed. If you have, then I'm grateful for doing that. Continue supporting this channel. Share with family and friends. Click notification bell for more, and click like. We're going to look at a material, review this material. Looking at China, looking at China business districts in China, looking at Beijing, Shanghai, Guangzhou, Guangdong. These are actual places in China. Shenzhen, Guangdong, Hong Kong. These are places in China. Chongqing, Suzhou, Jiangsu. These are Chinese names. Wuhan, Hubei. Wuhan is where COVID-19 started, allegedly, or partially. Hangzhou, Zhejiang. These are actually principality of China. Nanjing, Jiangsu, Ningbo, Zhejiang, Qingdao, Shandong. If you've been to China, leave a comment below. Changsha, Hunan, Zhengzhou, and Nan. Fuzhou, Fujian, Jinan, Shandong, Shandong, Urumqi, Xinjiang. Looking at science and technology, this is actually a preview of what China look like. But the main topic here is to illustrate China as being a country full of wealth, which wealth is being concentrated in the hands of the few and not the many. That's the whole point about this exercise. So looking at science and technology in China, list of Chinese discoveries, a list of Chinese inventions, historical history of China and technology in China, earliest known written formula for gunpowder from the Wu-Jing, Zhongzhou in 1044 CE. Some of these things like gunpowder, actually formula based, which is what I said. We use industry, we use technology, engineering for weaponization. Gunpowder is actually part of the weapon for guns and things like that. So you write a formula. China wrote this formula, the earliest known written formula for gunpowder, from the Wu Jing, Zhongzhao, which occurred in 1044 CE. So you could say that, violence, which is lack of cultural proficiency, has been happening for many years. China was the world leader in science and technology until the Ming Dynasty. Ancient and medieval science, Chinese discoveries and inventions such as paper making, printing, the compass, and gunpowder, the four great inventions became widespread across East Asia, the Middle East, and later Europe. So China were already making discoveries and inventions, paper making, printing, the compass what you use when you for traveling, the gunpowder, the four great inventions, which is actually paper making for communication, printing, the compass, and gunpowder for record keeping and things like that. So the four great inventions, which became widespread also across East Asia, the Middle East, and later in Europe. So I spoke also about globalization. We didn't begin yesterday. Today we are actually in the final stages of globalization, which is why I say what happened in China is most likely to be happening anywhere else in the world because of our concept and practice of harmonization. That's the whole point about globalization, is to harmonize society. So people speak either English or Chinese or both, predominantly, or whatever other language spoken in one country to be spoken also in another. Trade, the nature of relationship globally, worlds without border, which is actually a feature of modern capitalism. So by the 17th century, the Western world surpassed China in scientific and technological achievements. The causes of these early modern great diversions continue to be debated by scholars. After repeated military defeats by the European colonial powers and Japan in the 19th century, Chinese reformers began promoting modern science and technology as part of the self-strengthening movement. After the communists came to power in 1949, efforts were made to organize science and technology based on the model of the Soviet Union, in which scientific research was part of the central planning. After Mao's death in 1976, science and technology were promoted as one of the four modernizations, and the Soviet inspired academic system was gradually reformed. Looking at China, linking it with modern development, modern era, what is happening in China, happening elsewhere, including the cost of living crisis. The importance of this is that there is a problem as serious as the cost of living crisis. The cost of living crisis involves the basics, which, if not rectified, people will literally die. Medicine, education, transport, employment. You see, the cost of living potentially can exclude almost anybody from everything. So it's important for me and for the rest of the world to look at what's happening around the world. we need to take responsibility for our world. We need to take responsibility for ourselves. Looking at the modern era of society in China, so headquarters of Tencent in Shenzhen, one of the largest technology and entertainment companies in the world. Since the end of the Cultural Revolution, China has made significant investments in significant research, in scientific research, and is quickly catching up with the United States in R&D spending. China officially spent around 2.4% of its GDP on R&D in 2020, totally to around 377.8 billion. According to the World Intellectual Property Indicators, China received more applications than the US did in 2018 and 2019, and ranked first globally in patents, utility models, trademarks, industrial designs, and creative goods exports in 2021. It was ranked 12th in the Global Innovation Index in 2023, a considerable improvement from its rank of 35th in 2013. Chinese supercomputers have been ranked the fastest in the world on a few occasions. However, these supercomputers rely on critical components, namely processors designed in foreign countries, imported from outside of China. China has also struggled with developing several technologies domestically, such as the most advanced semiconductors and reliable jet engines. These are actually descriptions of how the society of China operates in the contemporary society, and having its genesis in what took place in the early decades. But the essence of this conversation hinges on there being enough wealth in the world, including in China, such as to expose society, including China, as to why there is poverty of any sort anywhere in the world, and also why there is the cost of living, which is a symptom of poverty. Poverty, in turn, being a symptom of failure in terms of development, in terms of the public sector, to eradicate poverty. Which poverty is actually eradicatable if government has the political and also the cultural capability so to bring changes. So China has also struggled with developing several technologies domestically, such as the most advanced semiconductors and reliable jet engines. China is developing its education system with an emphasis on science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, STEM. It became the world's largest publisher of scientific papers in 2016. Chinese-born academicians have won prestigious prizes in the sciences and in mathematics, although most of them had conducted their winning research in Western nations. Let's look at the space program of China. So some of which is actually launched. The launch, for example, the launch of Shenzhou 13, the launch of Shenzhou 13 by a Long March 2F rocket. China is one of the only 3 countries with independent human space flight capability. The Chinese space program started in 1958 with some technologies transfers from the Soviet Union. However, it did not launch the nation's first satellite until the 1970s with the Dongfang-Hong 1, which made China the 5th country to do so independently. In 2003, China became the 3rd country in the world to independently send humans into space with the young Li Wei's space flight aboard Shenzhou 5. These are some of the scientific and technological progress being made by China as part of 2023. 18 Chinese nationals have journeyed into space, including 2 women. In 2011, China launched its first space station test bed, Tiangong 1. In 2013, a Chinese robotic rover Yutu successfully touched down on the lunar surface as part of the Chang'e 3 mission. In